Today, we will reflect on Chapter 4, Integral Ecology. On behalf of our organizing team, Care of the Mission, I extend a heartfelt welcome to our resource person and every participant who has joined us from different places. Thank you for taking the time to be part of this important reflection. Chapter 4 reminds us that everything is connected: our relationship with God, with one another, and with all of creation. As we gather today, let us listen with open hearts, share respectfully, and reflect on how we can better care for our common home in our daily lives. May this session inspire us to deepen our love for God's creation and strengthen our commitment to protect it for present and future generations. I encourage everyone to participate actively. Keep your microphones muted when not speaking, and feel free to share your thoughts during the discussion. Once again, I warm welcome to everyone. Let us now begin with inviting God's presence through our opening prayer. I invite Genevieve to lead us into prayer.
Thank you for blessing us together this evening. Bless each one of us during this session with your wisdom and guidance. I cannot hear.
So sorry for this. I'll just say a short prayer before we begin with the session.
All right, go ahead.
Loving Father, our Creator, we thank you for the gift of our common home and for the beauty of all creation. Open our minds and hearts as we reflect on the message of Laudato Si, chapter 4. Help us to listen with wisdom, care for the earth with love, and respect the dignity of every person. May this session inspire us to become faithful stewards of your creation and instruments of hope and peace. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mabel, and also Genevieve. You tried your best. Thank you for leading us into prayer. It is now my privilege to introduce our speaker for today's session. Our speaker is Sister Anita Maria Braganza, CJ, former Loreto, IBPMNE, Executive Director. She is a CJ Sister of US region. Anita was invited to join the staff at Springbank on the completion of her 12-week sabbatical at Springbank in May 2020. In 2022, Dominican sister and founding director Trina McCormick retiring, the board of directors voted and then invited Sister Anita to take on the role of executive director. Sister Anita has served the province in various capacities: province leader of Province of South Asia, formator, community leader, high school principal, and youth formator. Anita has an MA in English Literature from Jadavpur University, MS in Pastoral Counseling from Loyola University, Maryland, and a licentiate in the piano from the Trinity College of Music, London. Anita enjoys meeting people from all walks of life who comes to Springburn to grow to find God, holy mystery. For Anita, being at Springbank is more than just work. It's an invitation to continue the journey of transformation of consciousness. She is hoping that many of her CJ sisters will come to Springbank. Thank you, sister, for your invitation. Thank you, Sister Anita, for your generosity in accepting our invitation to guide us through chapter 4 of Laudato Si. We are grateful for your willingness to share your knowledge, insights, and reflections with us. We are confident that today's presentation will deepen our understanding of integral ecology and inspire us to put these teachings into practice in our families, communities, and daily lives. Once again, I welcome you, dear sister Anita, for this session. The platform is yours. Thank you, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Anupa. I have to say, my heart is going boom, 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 boom inside with seeing so many people here. And I'm sure uh, a lot of you know a lot more about things than I do. However, the beauty of this is that we're all on this journey together. And if you are here today, I'm sure it's because you really want to learn more. Um, and make decisions around your life and in your ministries as teachers, as administrators, principals, whatever you're doing, particularly at the level of JPIC. And I'm hoping also at community levels this happens. I know it does, because I see the wonderful communications coming through and I say, wow, things are moving beautifully. And just to go back, thank you, Anupa, for that introduction. Please put all that behind, okay? It's it's a lot of words, but I appreciate it, Anupa. Thank you. Um, I'd
Thank
like
you.
to just mention a little phrase from Genevieve's prayer, and I think that's really key to perhaps what we're doing this evening. She said something about, open our minds to learn and our hearts to understand. Normally, we associate the heart only with love, which is wonderful, and we need to do that. But a reminder that our hearts, in fact, they say our hearts also have memory. It's so to help our hearts, that's where we need to be moved. We can have a lot of knowledge, and that's what happened with me. I had a lot of knowledge, and a lot of us have a lot of knowledge. Even when we're doing JPIC work, we know a lot. And I'm sure a lot of what I'm going to share with you today, you already know. But maybe it's time to remain open, to let that knowledge touch our hearts. And I think for most of us sisters who are of the Ignatian tradition, that's what Ignatius calls us to, a conversion of the heart. So when we're looking at integral ecology, my hope is that we don't just look at it as being, oh, the environment is there, the earth is there, and we are here. Okay? But we look at it as a whole, as we are one. So let me just go on, I think, because I'm aware that, you probably have other things to do. So let's start the screen share and start my, where's the, dear. Try to see. Oh, do I not see? Where's the slideshow? Oh, it's under, sorry. Transitions. Move this out. Sorry about that. Come on. Okay. I need to move this slideshow. Is that okay? Can you see what I'm seeing?
Yes, sister,
Yes,
we
sister.
can say
See
that.
the slide? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So
Yes,
as
sister.
as Anupa mentioned, we could look at chapter 4 of Laudato Si, which is on integral ecology. And before we do that, I'd like to just read from a wonderful little book that I often refer to called Embers by a native Indian called Richard Wagamis. So it's me. Tell me about love. Old woman, it is our only real choice, the only thing that we can truly give. Me, how do we do that? Old woman, choose it above all else. Love is you leading me back to the highest possible version of myself. It's me leading you back to who you were created to be. It is the most important choice we can make for each other. Me, those closest to us, you mean? Old woman, no, everyone, everything, widening our circle at every opportunity. Me, sounds hard. Old woman, soon is being born, but we all do. Just stop for a moment and look at that slide and see how it speaks to you. So you just had a technical problem. This thing wasn't moving. So we did talk about integral ecology. Say everything is connected, right? And as we go on, you'll see what this particular encyclical is saying. So integral ecology is a key concept in chapter 4 of Laudato Si. And Pope Francis, on this encyclical on the environment, it flows from his understanding that everything is closely related and that today's problems call for a vision capable of taking into account every aspect of the global crisis. And one of the things that he does, this encyclical does very beautifully, is actually highlight different aspects of ecology and bring that together. I don't know why this is not moving. So, what is the meaning of integral ecology? Oh, okay. He doesn't, in this encyclical, these two particular writers are not mentioned, okay? Thomas Berry and Leonardo Boff. But I believe that they did have an influence on the writing of this particular encyclical. And as you know, none of these encyclicals are written personally by the Pope. It is influenced, read by others, and they all bring their learning into it. But Pope Francis, being a Jesuit, I do believe he was really well read, and being from having worked most of his life in Latin America, he would have been influenced by Leonardo Boff for sure. So Thomas Berry and Leonardo Boff's writings would have influenced the kind of ecological theology that helped form the intellectual climate in which Laudato Si was written. There is no evidence to show that Pope Francis and Boff ever met. However, there is evidence to show that they did have a communication. There was a discussion and correspondence. Okay. Dash it. Sorry, I don't know why this. I keep getting stuck on every slide. Okay. Thomas Berry, some of you already know of Thomas Berry. In fact, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of him. And he was a Passionist priest, and he called himself a geologian, a theologian of the earth. And in really studying this chapter 4, I could see a lot of the influence of Thomas Berry on the writing of that chapter. And therefore, I would keep referring to him in between. So Thomas Berry says, Earth is a communion of subjects, not a collection of objects. So when I'm talking of the tree, I'm not talking about it just being a tree, as something out there, the rocks being something out there. They're all subjects. They all have a being. And then to carry on, the natural world is the largest sacred community to which we belong. This again, Thomas Berry. To become alienated from this community is to become destitute in all that makes us human. To damage this community is to diminish our own existence. We forget that because, so often when we're making decisions, we often are just looking at, how does it affect us, we human beings. And I think that's what Springbank did for me because I was very firm and, very, very, I really believed in JPIC. But it came so much from the head. This is what we should be doing. We shouldn't be cutting trees. We shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be doing that because it affects us. Global warming affects us as humans. We are sweating it out, and it's a lot of disasters happen, and it's affecting us. I began to see, really, this is much more. It's much more about love. It's much more about connection. It's much more about how it affects every other being, just not the human. And that's what Thomas Berry is reminding us. And that's what the Integral Ecology Act shows us too, right through that chapter. It's a short chapter, but it's an excellent chapter. And for me, it made me think, you know what? This chapter 4, in terms of the whole encyclical, is really like the chapter on mission for us in constitutions, where it's the central aspect, where, everything flows towards mission, all our formation, all our learning, all our lives. And then, from mission, again, we flow out. Same thing, integral ecology, central to our understanding of the environment, to what's happening to Earth, not just to humans. So therefore, integral ecology is we need to consider social, economic, environmental. And that's where chapter 4 reminds us that it's not a separate crisis. It's not the environment versus social. It's one complex issue. It's social, it's economic, it's environmental. In fact, I would almost reverse it and say it's environmental if I had to put it in order of priority, because when the environment is degraded, everything else gets degraded. Mhm. Oh, it's stuck again. Okay. So let's pause for a few moments again. So, in what way do you experience yourself as part of an interdependent we rather than isolated I? When I'm saying we, I'm inviting you to look at just not you and your community, local community, your community around you as humans, the human species, but as part of the earth community. How much do you experience yourself as part of that interdependent earth community? I think this is a something for us to consider even as we're doing our ongoing reflection on the constitutions. I mean, when we were looking at that last chapter, there was some reference to, care of earth. And I really would invite us to really um, to look at it even in that broader context of the earth community. We cannot anymore look at ourselves just as human beings living on earth. And we'll talk more about that as we go on. Okay. So as Laudato Si says, the solutions require an integrated approach, rightly so, for combating poverty, restoring dignity, protecting the natural world. Okay? And you can see here some of the work being done by our social development centers and by our schools as well. I know lots being done in terms of planting trees, protecting the environment, making children aware of the environment. And then our development centers work towards combating poverty and restoring dignity. And that's something that we lose. And you'll see in the later slides that once we degrade our environment, we degrade just not the environment in terms of the natural world, but we degrade the human environment also gets degraded. And with that comes so many different problems. And I said this is one complex issue. So environmental issues are linked to human life and society. So strategies must address all dimensions, both dimensions at once. So because protecting nature supports human well-being, protecting human dignity protects the environment too. When I can respect you and you respect me, we respect each other as a wider community, I think and hopefully that leads us to respect the environment too. Because I think that's one of the basic things that's missing in the world today, that lack of respect. Whether we're talking in terms of just the care of earth, but talking in terms of religion, all the differences that are being brought in, whether you're black, white, brown, whether you're from a first world country, whatever, developing country, differences. So look at that little quotation there from Thomas More. Earth is not a platform for human life. It's a living being. We are not on it, but part of it. Its health is our health. So the environment is your home. Keep it clean and healthy. Clean and healthy. Health. What does that mean? And therefore, Laudato Si calls for importance of ongoing research. And ongoing research will also then help us. And when I'm saying research, it doesn't have to be the scientist doing it. In our own way, the importance of reading. It's very easy to keep going, and you can get really totally hooked onto just, the internet, onto Facebook, which teaches us a lot. I learn a lot from Facebook, but also to go to books and read. Because in reading, you actually get a full, complete picture. So that's why the importance of ongoing research, the ongoing study, the ongoing learning. Remember the prayer, open our minds to learn, and then from that learning, our hearts to understand. So I just want to give a little example here. So research tells us how different creatures relate to one another, making up the larger units we term ecosystems. That's from Laudato Si. An example, did you know that scientists are now discovering that trees not only connect through their root systems, but through sound? This wonderful writer, Suzanne Simard, made us aware of trees connecting underground. And they say that, when you're cutting a tree and there are other trees around, they give warning signals to other trees that something's happening. But now they're saying that they also connect through sound. We're not aware of what exactly it is, but they're picking that up. So forests are having constant conversations humans cannot hear. Imagine that. So when you're out among the trees, become aware of the trees as just not being an object out there, but they're living beings that have their own way of connecting. Connect with the trees then. I know all of us have mostly properties around or parks around. Become aware of those trees. When crows are not feeling well, they look for an anthill, spread their wings over it so the ants will crawl all over them, coating them in formic acid, which the ants release, killing the bacteria and parasites hiding in their wings. Other bird species learn this from each other. Isn't that amazing? So they're not just crows or just ants. They have intelligence too, you know. What I'd really encourage you to look at some of the documentaries of David Attenborough. You know, Netflix has them all available, or YouTube also will have a lot. So there's a lot to learn, and it's so interesting. It's just not learning, it's so interesting. And if you haven't seen this movie, I'd really encourage you to see it, Octopus, My Teacher. Have some of you seen it? Try to look for it. It's wonderful. It's really touching. Octopus, My Teacher. So one of the things that issues that Laudato Si chapter 4 brings up is the critiques an exploitative mindset. So if you see, you know, who this gentleman is, he's got one of these famous things of drill, baby, drill. Yeah, because the oil industry, the gas, as they call it, gas over here, the petrol, drives a huge bit of the economy because people use their cars a lot. And therefore, when the price of gas goes up, everything, petrol goes up, the price of everything goes up. So Donald Trump, President Trump, is now wanting to drill oil in Alaska. Yeah. So an exploitative mindset is a mindset that says, let's just keep taking. No question of giving back. You know, in the Native Indian tradition, and I'm sure it's with our tribal sisters as well, they talk about, you know, a relationship of reciprocity. If I take, I also give back. I just don't take. There's a relationship there. Hmm? But with us humans, especially politically, I think, and maybe for us also in our moments when we're not reflective enough, um, it's all about what can I get rather than what can I give. Mhm. So we tend to fragment reality, see issues as separate rather than as one interconnected reality. So the common good is treated as secondary to systems of power and efficiency. So power and efficiency is the most important thing rather than the common good. And that enables exploitation in every sphere of the poor, the natural world. And when we do that, it affects future generations. So Laudato Si calls for a shift to integral ecology, a more relational way of understanding people, society, and the environment, one that respects limits, recognizes interdependence, and calls for conversion in values and lifestyle. You know, just that one phrase there really is you know, when we're looking at this chapter, it's just not about environment, it's about our lives, you know, our spirituality, the choices we make. So it talks about limits, respecting boundaries between ourselves, between the earth community and ourselves, recognizes interdependence, that we need each other, and calls for conversion in values and lifestyle. Again, Thomas Berry, physical degradation of the natural world is also degradation of the interior world of the human. Think about that. Physical degradation of the natural world is also degradation of the interior world of the human. Doesn't that sound right? Mhm. So therefore, Laudato Si then talks of ecosystems and regeneration. So talk about ecosystems uh, interact. It's important because ecosystems interact to sustain life. So they help us with dispersing carbon dioxide. Forests absorb carbon dioxide, produce oxygen, prevent erosion. And one of the things that I learned quite recently was that oceans are a huge source of oxygen. It says produces 50% of our oxygen. So this tiny phytoplankton that live down in the oceans. So sisters, it's just not trees and plants and the greens, even water, the oceans. And I often think of these big cruises that are going on now. Everybody's going on a cruise out this side. I don't know about India so much now. And I keep thinking of all the stuff that's thrown into the oceans. And for us, maybe we also throw things into the oceans, all the waste, all the rubbish. And what happens to the ecosystem under? In fact, they say that the Great Barrier Reef, which has beautiful, there's a picture of it up there, uh, fish and plants and algae growing there is being threatened now. A lot of it is dying because of the waste being thrown in, the chemicals that are being emptied by factories into oceans. Um, so therefore, what do they do? What do the ecosystems do? They help produce, control illnesses and epidemics, cleaner air, cleaner water, better nutrition. They form soil, break down waste. That's why we talk about composting. So wondering how much of us really do composting in our communities, because in that way we are giving back to earth rather than just throwing it into a dump, into a trash heap. So ecosystems must be produced and allowed to regenerate. They reduce exposure to germs and pollutants. And one of the things that's happening everywhere is that, people are filling up ponds, filling up wetlands to put up buildings. And that's the worst thing we could do. Because as I mentioned here, the wetlands are really important. One of the things that these wet areas do, wetlands do, is that they actually store large amounts of oxygen, and that helps to control climate change. So it provides breeding, feeding, and shelter for many birds and animals. And they also help replenish our aquifers for water. Mhm. So again, with an exploitative mindset, let's just fill up everything. Let's level out everything. Let's concretize everything. Let's put down tiles everywhere. Cover up all the greens that there is because we want it to be neat and tidy for us humans. But we're not thinking about what's going on under, what we're doing to earth, to our mother. There's something to think about, I think, uh, for those of us who are part of schools, and most of our schools have a lot of property, our educational institutions. How do we treat the earth that's around us? Or do we give importance only to our buildings? So the other aspect that Laudato Si brings in chapter 4 is that we look at social ecology, environmental analysis cannot be separated from the human context. As again, Thomas Berry says, you cannot have well people on a sick planet. We're all interconnected. As you see the little image that I have there. So when you look at the human being, it's individual well-being. We talk about personal growth, health, happiness, self-care, etc., family relationships, connection to nature. It's all interconnected in the context of human life. So just as we give importance to ourselves, we need to give importance to all the different aspects, the human, family, work-related, urban contexts. So integral ecology calls for a more complete humanism where it integrates economics, human relationships, the environment. Again, from Thomas Berry and Brian Swim, our human economy is derivative from the earth economy. To glory in a rising gross domestic product with an irreversibly declining earth product is an economic absurdity. Today we forget that. We keep taking, and forgetting, there's a limit to what we can take and how much earth can keep giving us. Just look at the little, sorry, no, to go back. The little graphic there. So every violation of solidarity and civic friendship harms the environment. And that's from Laudato Si. So when we fail each other, we also fail our world, leading to problems of violence, drugs, etc. So social ecology, and it's great that in integral ecology, they bring in social ecology, which sometimes we could forget. So it extends from family, local, national, international. So it keeps widening out. And you can see what happens then when we neglect, our relationships with each other, with the environment. Another very good aspect that Laudato Si brings out of ecology is cultural ecology. And I've got here, avoid one-size-fits-all solutions. Again, it's a consumeristic vision. Uniform regulations, technical fixes may ignore local complexities. Local problems require local participation. Everyone in the community must be actively involved. I like the little graphic up there with the consumeristic vision is one size fits all. And, it makes me reflect on what's happening, even to the world, the consumer world. If you go to one of the big malls, I know Calcutta well, and I'm sure Delhi as well. I'm sure it's in the other big cities too. You go to a mall, these big ones, you could be in any part of the Western world as well. It looks the same. We have the same brands. We promote the same products. Why? Because it's feeding into what we want rather than what we need. And therefore, industry knows that. So it's one size fits all. And therefore, even in terms of differences in culture, clothing, etc., everything gets leveled down to one common platform. And again, I'd like to just refer here then to what Thomas Berry, his three dynamic principles of the universe. I'd encourage you to read Thomas Berry because he really brings in a different aspect of our lives, of looking at the environment and looking at the relationship between us and Earth Mother. So it's the three dynamic principles of the universe is one is interiority. As beings develop, they become more capable of agency, expression, and meaningful participation. Nature is full of ways of acting, not just being acted upon. So every being has its own innate intelligence. Do you even think of that? So every being has an inner spontaneity and capacity for experience. Having a pet dog, having a dog, Max, and seeing Jake and Shelly, the other two dogs that are part of Springbank community, I see that so much. You can see it in their eyes, you can see it in their faces, that they also have an experience and an interiority, which we think, oh, they're just dogs. They don't really have anything much. No, those of you who do have pets and who love pets would know it. I'm thinking of Helen and when she was in Lole, and Helen would breed pigs and cows. And I remember her saying, "Oh, I can't," when they were growing these pigs too, and they had names for them. And when it came to giving a pig up to kill, Helen would run away because she couldn't take it. Because in some way, Helen connected with that pig. I knew there was something more in that relationship. I didn't give it much importance then, but now when I think about it, the pigs, I hate saying it. Used to love bacon. I cannot eat it. Have are as intelligent as a 3-year-old human being. So think about it. But we don't think about it, do we? So communion, another dynamic principle is communion. The natural world is not a collection of separate objects. It's a web of interdependence. Life sustains life through relationships. Okay, and we know that. So when we talk about communion, even in the context of church, in liturgy, how much of it is really communion, deep communion? Or do we just focus on that little wafer and say, "Oh, this is communion, I'm receiving the body of Jesus"? But do we realize the body of Jesus is bigger than just that little host? The body of Jesus is you and me. The body of Jesus, the cosmic Christ, is out there in nature, in the trees, in the plants, in the animals, every being, the water. It's all part of the body of the cosmic Christ. So harming one part harms the whole. And then differentiation. Each being has its own integrity. The diversity of life isn't a mistake to smooth out. Okay, that's a beauty. Um, One of our presenters actually showed us a beautiful slide of the grains of sand. I always thought sand is the same, but actually, every grain of sand looks different and is so beautiful. So, therefore, with cultural ecology, as Laudato sees, is to avoid a dominant lifestyle. So, avoid imposing a dominant lifestyle tied to one production model. So, it encourages us to respect different cultures and ways of life. Not all development should look the same everywhere. And this is where the use of AI really needs to be considered. So the disappearance of cultures as dangerous as the extinction of species. Okay, so you look at the little graphics on the right. Cultural disappearance is as dangerous. So you see what happens with loss of species. There's extinction of animals and plants, loss of unique genetic information, disruption of economic ecosystems and balance, irreversible loss of natural heritage. And loss of culture is also important. And therefore, so one of the things that I learned at Springbank was really that we do not own the land owns us. Yeah, we don't live on Earth. We are Earth. We are part of Earth. And how much do we really think about that? Even on Ash Wednesday, we talk about, remember you are dust, we are ashes, and to ashes you will return. And now we say, remember you are dust. If you look at the whole cosmic story, 13.8 billion years ago, but let's limit ourselves today just to this. The land owns us. We do not own the land. So indigenous peoples and land. So that's another aspect Laudato Si brings up. Indigenous people have special link to their lands. They should not be displaced for agricultural expansion. And now, I think when they're referring to agricultural expansion, it's just with big multinational companies are doing. taking over huge tracts of land. Uh, why? So that they produce enough food just for human consumption, for especially for cattle grazing, especially here in the Western world, and it's growing in India too. India is supposed to be one of the biggest exporters of beef. For mining, these activities degrade the land and harm communities. I'll be happy to share this PowerPoint with you once we're done so you can look at it more closely. I'm just aware of time. So the next, I have a little video here from an Australian Aboriginal. Sabrina would have seen this at Springbank, and it's beautiful. You can look at it again on YouTube if you like, if you don't fully understand him, okay? But I'll play it for you just now.
Being raped is one of the worst fears that women have.
This is not it.
So we take precautions to avoid dangerous situations.
We can't hear the sound.
You can't hear the sound?
Here at
But now
Mutijula,
we can
Now?
beside Uluru, the home of
Do you hear it?
Now it's there. It's there.
You can?
my
We can hear it now.
ancestors. And it was in that area there.
Just go.
Here at Mutijula, right beside Uluru, the home of my ancestors. And it was in that area there called Tempe Downs where I came out. And that's why the police were brought in. And that's how I was taken, at that time by a police officer into Alice Spring. Like so many kids who then now refer to as the stolen generation. But of course, bush living was bush. It totally took most of your things from the land you're on. We just lived on the land as people of the land. To us, it was a natural way of being part of all that there is was just the way you was. You didn't see anything any different from you. It was just a way of life that was inclusive of all that there is through life. Life is the binding and the connecting way the oneness is. If you're alive, you connect to everything else that is alive. That oneness included everything that was around us, and you was raised with that teachings from a child upwards. The relationship and our relationship system for our people here. See, my people see land ownership as being totally different to the English way of ownership, because ours used to be really the land owns us, and it still is that to us. The land grows all of us up, and it does. No human is older than the land itself. It just isn't. And no living marsupial is as old as the land itself. Everything that's been and gone with life in the flesh has died. But the land is still here. lot of land which has been handed down to you by your ancestors. We say the granny law has given me my responsibility now that I'm grown up to care for my country, care for my mother, care for everything that is around me, the oneness, the greatness of that oneness, to be responsible in both caring, in every single way, which we call the kanyini, caring with unconditional love, with the responsibility. You feel that so well, that you feel good when you're in that space, and you kind of feel you're living with family when you include everything that is alive in that space. And that it's a huge space, and there's a lot of specimens of everything you could possibly imagine there with you. And then you grow up knowing that these are all your family. You can never feel lonely in that situation. You know, you just can't. How can you when all around you is family members, from this ground up, all the trees around you to the clouds hanging up around you, the birds flying by, the animals and reptiles that are just hidden in the shrub there for now, but can come out if they want to, hunt around for their little food. They can become food for us as well. It is a beautiful way of being. It doesn't push anyone out, but it brings everybody in. And the completeness of being who you are, where you are, is a really good feeling. It's a beautiful feeling. I wouldn't exchange it for anything. That's why I'm here, right beside all of it. I am so lucky.
Just need to get this back. Okay. Wasn't that a beautiful video? It's available on YouTube if you'd like to look at it again. So I'm sure if you reflected on that, you'd kind of look at it and say, God, there's nothing out there. And yet there's everything in that bare, barren land that our elder was in. Because everything was considered family there. Beautiful. The next chapter 4 then also deals with, just to move on, the ecology of daily life, cities and social life. There's one thing would like to say is like, as I moved on, I began to see there was such a focus on the human life, the urban life, our lives as human beings. So let's just keep in focus as well that we belong to Earth, right? And therefore, as humans, whatever we choose and decide then affects our relationship with Earth Mother. So when we're looking at cities and social life, as Laudato Si calls it, the ecology of daily life, overcrowding and anonymity can lead to antisocial behavior, violence, other factors, income inequality, housing instability, gang activity, substance use, and substance abuse. And the beautiful thing here is that, this is so hard for the poor. And yet people can still build belonging and community. And it's good that this chapter reminds us of that, because we can somehow look down at the poor and think that, they have nothing. therefore they have nothing. And yet, those of you who work with the poor, those of us who had experience, like I think of the rainbow homes and the children coming from those little, living off the street, it shows that there is love, and love proves more powerful than these conditions. There is family. They do care for each other. And maybe sometimes, children who come from affluent families can forget. I remember an experience of going out to the brick fields where they were each given, Monica took me out as provincial, were given a little small packet of biscuits. And these kids, I remember keeping those biscuits, but when their parents came in from the brick fields in the heat, there were, I think, 4 biscuits in that little packet. It was shared. It was shared. Mm-hmm. So even going with the rainbow homes, going to visit, the children who lived on the streets under tarp, they'd want straight away offer you tea and offer you whatever they could make you to feel at home. So it's a good reflection on us, on our inclusive living too. Stuck again. Oops. So, let us to see focuses then on housing, inequality, and transport. Lack of housing or inadequate housing is a major issue. Shanty towns, slums should be developed, not cleared. That's interesting, because usually governments think of just demolishing slums rather than developing them for the people who live there. Integrate rundown neighborhoods into welcoming cities. Consider the pollution from vehicles and poor public transportation can also damage life. And therefore, it talks of distributive justice, fairness in distribution. Common good requires concern for distributive justice. It's really talking about let each one receive what they need, what they deserve. Sounds like the Acts of the Apostles, right? And sometimes we'll talk about it in terms of being communistic. The Marxist thing of making sure all wealth is distributed. How that would happen would be more difficult because life can never be equal. But it can be that, it can be equitable. Okay, so supporting the poor is described as an ethical imperative. So the common good really is about human rights and dignity. The common good is rooted in respect for the human person. And I would just love to say, and this is where maybe I was a bit disappointed towards the end of chapter 4, is because it really zeroed in on the human person more than opening it up continuously as to the human person being part of the interdependent web of life. However, it's a good thing, though, that it reminds us of human ecology. So our body enables us to have direct relationship with the environment. It also enables us to have a direct relationship with God. So we are within the long unfolding of the universe. We have a special responsibility because we can think and reflect. It is through our bodies that we sense the divine, experience the beauty of the natural world, enjoy companionship and life. And one of the last things what he talks about in chapter 4 is the justice between generations. What they call intergenerational solidarity is required by justice. The world received also belongs to those who come after us. So what we receive is not only for ourselves, but it's for those who come after us. Therefore, we must consider, why are we here? What is the goal of our work? And then Laudato Si continues. It is The future and the meaning of our life is to leave a habitable planet, and that is a responsibility we all have. It's up to us. It affects the ultimate meaning of our earthly journey. Environmental harm is not only technical, it is moral and existential. We can see what's happening with the wars just now in the Ukraine, in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip, and also in parts of Africa, but we don't talk about so much, right? Uh, what's happening to the children there? What's happening to the animals, to the natural environment? Because all we're thinking about is this is our country, my land. We're not thinking of what are we leaving behind when we have these wars, when we have these conflicts. Not just the physical world, the psychological world is also affected. So I go back to Thomas Berry. Perhaps the most valuable heritage we can provide the future generation is in some sense of the great work that is before them, of moving the human project from its devastating exploitation to a benign presence. Moving the human project from its devastating exploitation to a benign presence. What is a benign presence? Calm, loving, warm, inclusive presence. When we talk about cancer, we talk about, is it malignant or is it benign? When it's malignant, and that's what we can be as a human species, a malignant species. We need to move to benign presence. And this is a quote from Thomas Berry that I just read in his book, The Great Work, Our Way into the Future. So Thomas Berry talks about moving from the Cenozoic era to the Ecozoic era. We talk about the Cenozoic period. That's what we are in now, and it's the age of mammals, where the mammal, the human, is the most dominant species. And he talks about moving into the Ecozoic era, where human life, we live our life in harmony with the environment, with the ecosystems, talking about sustainability. So it's not yet an official term, it's one that Thomas Berry coined, Ecozoic era. So it's time for us to stop thinking of ourselves and living in a way that we consider ourselves the most dominant species, to move to the Ecozoic era, where we live as a benign presence in harmony with the natural world. This decisive action needs to be taken here and now. The pace of consumption and waste stretches the planet's capacity. Current lifestyle risks catastrophes. And we've seen that. Look at the recent earthquakes in Venezuela. And that's because of the pressure on the earth with all our buildings that's causing earth. Earth cannot sustain the pressure we're putting on her. The effects of imbalance can only be reduced by decisive action now. Urgent action is needed here and now. And I would say, even before we can act here and now, let's inform ourselves. Let's look for that conversion of heart, so that our action flows from love rather than from anger. So what are some of the ethical obstacles? And Laudato Si talks about its being ethical and cultural decline. So decisive action is difficult due to the ethical, cultural, political decline and the risks involved because of rampant individualism, self-centered culture of instant gratification. I want, therefore I must have it. It doesn't consider what is the effect. Is it really something that would do me good and earth good? What are my choices in my lifestyle? And many social problems connect to this worldview then. I think that little graphic there tells a lot. So sometimes it's good to disconnect totally from your phones. In fact, they say a really healthy thing to do is at least a couple of hours or at least 1 hour before you start your day. Don't touch your phone. When you wake up in the morning, don't touch your phone. Become aware of yourself, become aware of your environment. Go out and spend time in prayer in the natural world. Connect with the trees, connect with the bigger world, and you will connect with the God within you. Before you go to bed, put away that phone. So again, from Thomas Berry, perhaps the most valuable heritage we can provide for future generations, I'm repeating that, is some sense of the great work that is before them, of moving the human project from its devastating exploitation to a benign presence. So the greatest of human discoveries in the future will be the discovery of human intimacy with all those other modes of being that live with us on this planet. The historical mission of our times is to reinvent the human within the community of life systems, to reinvent the human. Yeah. I think if you look at the picture here, this is the reinvented human. Within the community of life systems. Before I close with a reflection from a wonderful book, if you can get it, it's really worth getting. It's an older one, but it's worth getting. Sacred Earth, Sacred Soul by John Philip Newell. He says, John Scotus Eriugena said that the whole of the natural world is like a sacred text, and that includes the creatures and our creatureliness. All creatures, he says, are in humanity as if melted down in a crucible. Eriugena teaches that there are two books through which God is teaching. The first book is a small book, physically little. This is the book of Holy Scriptures. The second is the big book, the living text of the universe, which includes the great luminaries of the heavens, the sun, moon, stars, earth, sea, sky, the creatures of all these realms, and the multiplicity of life forms that grow from the ground. We need to read both books, he says, the sacred text of Scripture and the sacred text of the universe. If we read only the little book, we will miss the vastness and bigness of the utterance, everything vibrating with the sound of the divine. If we read only the big book, we are in danger of missing the intimacy of the voice, for the book of Scripture calls us to faithfulness in relationship, including faithfulness to strangers, refugees, widows, and the poorest among us. Everything is sacred, says Eriugena, but we lie in a state of forgetfulness of what is deepest in us and in everything that has being. I think that's so beautiful. So read both books. Let's just not sit with the little book, which is very important, the scriptures. But let's look at the scriptures of the natural world as well, is the invitation here. And then this is a favorite saying that I picked up from Father Jim, and he loved quoting this. Behold, on the day of my spiritual awakening, I saw God in all things and all things in God. So Ignatian. And I believe this is integral ecology. So let's pause for a few moments and look at these questions. What member of Earth community supported you today that you have never thanked? Not just outside, even at your table, the food that was brought to your table today. We may say, oh, Grace, thank you for the food we're eating. But we're eating something that has come from the Earth community that is supporting us. What part of the more than human world have you been treating as predictable that has been quietly surprising you? Have you taken time to allow the natural world to surprise you, the more than human world? and Rachel Carson. One way to open your eyes to the unnoticed beauty is to ask yourself, what if I'd never seen this before? What if I knew I would never see it again? Just if you have any questions or comments or reflections, over to Anupa. I'm happy to answer whatever I can, but it's a journey of learning for me, and I'm with you in that journey.
Thank you, Sister Anita. I sincerely thank you for encouraging us to explore the writings of Thomas Berry, whose vision of the earth as a living community continues to inspire ecological awareness and responsibility. Now the house is open. I warmly invite the participants to share their insights, reflections, or any queries you may have. Anybody, if you would like to share your insights.
Anything that may have struck you, any thought, any feeling?
Dear Sister Anita, thank you so much. It meant a lot for us, especially for me, that one sentence that touched me most, that is, we do not own the land, but land owns us. So really that touched me. So thank you for that. And it was beautiful expressing and taking every aspect of the environment and our life and the earth, how we are, where we are. It is our own inner being, that integral self. So thank you so much, sister.
Thank you, Sushila. It's a totally different perspective, right? We talk about land buying and selling, and who are we to buy and sell land? Really, I mean, legally it all happens. But, in our mindset, it's like in Springbank, one of the things that I hear said is that, the King of England in the 1600s gave the Springbank land to John Burgess, who was here in the US. Who was the King of England to give land to John Burgess? That land which was owned by the natives, the native Indians, they were displaced. As is happening in India today, people who own the land in the rural areas are being pushed because of poverty, because of all the different reasons.
Hi, Anita. This is Sabrina. I'm with the Shillong community here.
Hi, good to see you three.
Helen, Madhu, Euphemia.
Madhuji, yeah, Euphemia.
And yeah. So thank you for your sharing on the Laudato Si chapter 4. Of course, I feel privileged to have been there in Springbank and to understand, where you're coming from. For me, it was okay. So there were so many things that I could resonate with. And also, I didn't realize that in chapter 4, Laudato Si, it talks about the importance of ongoing research.
Mm.
And in Springbank, that was one of the things I learned was the influence of research with spirituality, the influence of the scientific knowledge that today, so many discoveries in science, which is actually also influencing our spirituality, which actually, helps me to broaden my own spirituality in the many ways that you have also shared. And I'm hoping that in the future I will be able to share what I experienced and the universe story with everyone. And the only thing that is really concerning for me, being right now here in India, is the degradation that is going to be happening in the Andaman Island. It's not really been in the, what is it called, the
Yes.
mainline news media, but there is this whole thing of the Andaman forest going to be, cut up for some project or the other. And I'm not too sure what is happening on that ground, but that's one of the things. But thank you so much for sharing. There's so many
Yeah.
things in my heart and mind, but just wanted to just say thank you on behalf of all of us here in
Yeah.
Shillong. Thanks.
Yeah. And thank you, Sabrina. It was wonderful having Sabrina there, and I'm really hoping and praying that many of you would take the opportunity when you're offered a sabbatical to do something different. You know, I know most people love to go to England and Ireland and meet up with sisters there. I, I'd invite you to take the risk to come to Springbank, and it really, I believe, will widen your vision of your life and your spirituality. It was lovely having Sabrina there and to see her engaging
Okay.
the process. It is true, that's happening all over. In fact, I hope the people will rise up and protest because that's the way it would stop. There is a little island, I believe. I don't know if anyone will remember this. Which island was it? In Romania? One of those little, Eastern European countries. And the Trump family very quietly paying money to the prime minister there, was going to take over that island, which is supposed to be one of a beautiful place, very natural, with a wonderful natural habitat. And we're going to put up a big resort there. And the people have protested and protested and protested and said, who is this man, the prime minister, to give away this land to the Trump family without informing them? So I do hope there is protest in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Thank you for bringing that to our notice.
Thank you,
And
Sister Sabrina and Sushila. Though I know many of us want to share and share our thoughts and insights, but we are looking at the time. Yes, thank you so much, everyone. Now I request, we will have more charts next month. So I request Amia to propose a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Mabel. And good evening, everyone gathered here. And thank you for your benign presence. As Sister Anita spoke about the benign presence. So my heart is full of gratitude with all of your online benign presence, which all of us felt listening to you, Sister Anita, with one another. It was a deep reflection in all these aspects. And just fresh, we are back. So the looking at different, the living creatures, living beings, when we saw, it was like eye-opening. Like, did I see before this? Just back from principals meeting, so in that hills where I experienced, and I could see the sisters enjoying the nature, because in the plains they have never seen those plants, those small flowers. So that was Again, reminding ourselves to see, and you said the decisive action here and now. Again, action begins with love rather than anger, as our sisters shared. So I take this, it is my privilege on behalf of all our Care of the Earth mission to propose a vote of thanks to Sister Anita for her deeply thoughts-provoking session this evening. Sister Anita, you took us into the heart of Laudato Si, Chapter 4, Integral Ecology. You reminded us that everything is connected. The cry of the earth, the cry of the poor cannot be separated. Environmental, social, culture, and our daily life issues are not separated boxes. They form one complex box, complex web. You also help us to see that we are not faced with two separate crises, one environmental and the other social, but rather with one complex crisis, which is both social and environmental. You made us look at our communities, our families, the schools, our curriculum, and our choices through that lens. Thank you for showing us that integral ecology begins with small daily decisions. How do we treat our living beings? Here again, we are not treating as objects, but with the subjects. How do we reduce waste? How we listen to the person who is excluded, isolated, how we teach science or social science together. So, Sister Anita, you did not just spoke about ecology, you called us to an ecological conversion. You asked us to move from culture of indifference to a culture of encounter and care, that is love. So we are very grateful for your clarity, your passion, and your challenge to see, the judge, and act. Because of you, Laudato Si no longer just an encyclical on our shelf, but a roadmap on our hands. I also thank my team, Care of the Earth mission team, for this initiative, our province leadership for their support, and each of you for your presence and participation. Dear Sister Anita, may your mission continue to disturb and inspire us. And as we are online on this platform, let us pledge to live integral ecology in word and action. So once again, thank you to each and everyone present on this platform.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you, Amia. Before we close, a reminder, today's session, along with all previous sessions, has been recorded and will be uploaded to the Care of the Earth Mission YouTube channel for those who would like to revisit or share it. We also have 2 more chapters remaining in our reflections together of Laudato Si, and we look forward to continuing this journey with you next month. Thank you, Sister Anita, and thank you all for joining us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Care of the Earth team committee, for inviting me to speak, and to all of you for taking the time to be here for the sharing. God bless you. God bless each of us. Take care. Bye.